Welcome everyone and thank you for joining this fireside chat. Smart IT, right spend, how to avoid waste and scale strategically. I'm excited to introduce our two featured speakers today, leaders who bring deep expertise and practical insight to this critical conversation. First, I'd like to introduce Naveen Rajkumar, CEO and President of ISOutsource. Joining him will be Jason Lathrop, Vice President of Technology and Operations at ISOutsource. Both bring a wealth of knowledge and operational insight and are going to give you some key tips on how to reduce waste, mitigate risk, and scale with intention.
Hey, my name is Naveen. I'm the CEO and President at ISOutsource. We're a modern technology consulting firm based out of Bothell, Washington. I've been in the business for more than 25 years, and I've loved doing technology because I believe the intersection of technology and business offers a great deal of advantages for businesses big and small. We at ISOutsource, we believe that the work we do impacts our communities in many different ways, and we believe in creating happy, productive, and supportive clients through the work we do here. Jason?
Yeah, and I'm Jason Lathrop. I'm the Vice President of Technology and Operations at ISOutsource. I started my career in the field supporting clients directly, and over time grew into leading IT, legal, compliance, and operations teams. Along the way, I've built expertise in areas like risk and security, and I've learned that security should be an advantage, not a hurdle, as long as it's combined with the right technology and processes. My teams lead by example from within our organization, showing how to drive secure and stable growth without breaking the bank. So what really excites me is helping people leverage technology and unlock opportunities within their organization. So Naveen, this seems like a relevant topic, considering everything in the economy that's happening around us right now. Why this topic specifically out of everything that we could have discussed today?
Yeah, there were so many topics we thought about, but the economy we live in right now, the stark reality is that most businesses, big or small, are asked to slash their operational budgets by 5 to 10%. We hear that every day from our clients calling us saying, hey, we need to cut down our spend by 5 to 10%. How can you help us? Now, here's the crux of the issue. Businesses would rather spend their money on what they know best, which is what generates revenue for them. If it's a healthcare company, focus on healthcare systems, or a construction company, or a legal firm, or a wealth management firm. Small and medium business owners, that's their subject matter expertise, and that's where we want to push all their budgets. Now, but if you think about it, IT is the backbone of every business, big or small. The pandemic proved that to us. But IT is still seen as a necessary evil for most businesses. And when CEOs sit down and do budgets, they do all the other budgets first, and then the leftovers go to IT. And you know that, typically, right?
Yeah.
Now, the problem, Jason, is cost cutting done the wrong way could lead to disastrous results for companies down the line. Right? So my hope is that in this webinar, we can educate our audience on, yes, there's the reality of cutting costs, but how do you do that the right way? That you're not crippling your businesses, but you're propelling your business forward by smart spending. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that, Naveen, and I agree many leaders struggle with that. So I'm glad we're able to discuss that today.
Yeah, and I'm glad to share this table with you because in your role of, as a leader in technology and operations, heading internal IT for a company, you're in the same boat as many of our clients, right? When budgets become tight, we turn to you and say, Jason, can we find some money in IT? So how do you think about IT budgeting? And what are some practical tips as we think about how do we cut costs?
Yeah, so Naveen, I try to break the costs, if you will, into two fundamentally different buckets. There's the keeping the lights on, and then there's the IT strategy spend that comes with the organization. I try to think of keeping the lights on as things like the internet in the office, the firewall, the laptops, the different necessities that we interact with every single day. And then I try to separate that from the strategy pieces or the strategic pieces, right? So that's going to be things like additional tools, identifying different ways to better the experience both internally and externally, as well as finding different ways to gain improvement in productivity. As a technology leader, I have to understand how we're spending in both of those buckets independently to be able to flex as needed with the situation. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I love the way you're thinking very distinctly about these two different buckets, right? What are the keeping the lights on cost, which we absolutely have to spend to keep the business running, and then the strategic technology costs. So I hope our audience just gets that clarity as they think about their IT budgets. Now, but let's focus on the first bucket, the keeping the lights on cost, right? It's hard to find money there to reinvest into strategic initiatives, right? So do you have 2 or 3 practical tips for our audience as you think about the keeping the lights on bucket?
Yeah, so a couple of things that we practice internally, and that is paying attention to contracts, right? We all have contracts. Contracts all expire at different times. Most contracts this day and age have auto renewals in them. But what's really important is understanding what those obligations are when they're up for renewal and evaluating not just how much it is, but what's in it.
Yeah.
Is it still needed? Is the number of licenses that you have necessary? Is there overlap in tools? We may have implemented things over a period of time, but as the business evolves and tools change and everything comes with that, there's often opportunity to pull back on certain renewals if that's covered by something else. Outside of that, understanding adoption as you roll out tools and the organization matures, some tools may not be necessary. So paying attention to the adoption and the usage before you go back and renew. To put that into perspective, very, very real scenario within our organization in the last few months was, as you're aware, we had a contract that was up for renewal. Had we just let it run as its renewal was set to be, it would have resulted in spending what we had planned. But by reviewing that, we literally saved $60,000 by evaluating that 12-month term renewal and making sure it aligned with our needs. So paying attention and understanding what's out there and getting ahead of it before that renewal clause hits is really critical.
Yeah, so I hope the $60,000 number caught the attention of our audience, because that was a big saving, right? Thanks to you and how you thought about contract renewal that way and negotiating that. So it adds up, right? There's nothing small like there's nothing like a small contract. Every contract renewal could add or subtract on your IT spend if you're not careful about it. So Jason, the other piece that modern companies, and I'm sure I've seen you doing this as well, is cybersecurity is no longer a luxury. Right? There was a time that cybersecurity was seen as the second bucket of strategic initiatives. No, cybersecurity is part of keeping your lights on. Right? So I was talking to a client recently, one of our large clients, in fact, and the CEO would not want to put multi-factor authentication on some of their critical systems. And when I probed him and I asked him why, and I tried to explain the risk, his only reasoning was, oh, it's a nuisance. I do not want to be plugging in another 6-digit number into my phone just to access that system. But then I turned around and I told him, hey, but you do that for your social media accounts. Mm-hmm. And if you do that for your social media accounts where there's not much of financial data or critical client data, why would you not do that for your most critical business system? And that made this client pause and ask himself, and then that became a short conversation at that point. So keeping the lights on is not just laptops, firewalls, licenses that you need. The modern company, the modern CEO also thinks about cybersecurity as keeping the lights on. Is that right? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely would agree with that.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, Naveen, this is where I believe the challenge is. It's a lack of awareness. Would you say you see a lack of awareness in your interactions with clients? So heck, I mean, even prospects.
Yeah. I meet a lot of clients and prospects, at least one a week as part of my job. I would, Jason, put these in this awareness gaps in 4 different buckets. right? The first one I hear about is, oh, I have cyber insurance. I'm good, right? Anytime you propose an initiative to a client and it costs some amount of money, you hear, oh, but I have cyber insurance. Is that not enough? Now, what a lot of CEOs, business owners don't realize is that cyber insurance is might not, pay for everything if something goes wrong. It's like any other insurance, right? Think about your house insurance or your car insurance. If you do something negligent, if you did not put some key systems in place, then insurance might turn you down. So the fact that you have cyber insurance does not mean that you need to have your policies reviewed, your DR things tested. There's so many things that you have to do for your cyber insurance to kick in and save you when there's a problem. So if the first myth or awareness gap is cyber insurance is good, we encourage that, we recommend that for our clients, but that's not enough as you think about cybersecurity. The second awareness gap I see is I hear clients refer to compliance as a checkbox. Right? So we talk a lot about governance, risk, and compliance, and when I hear clients saying, oh, that's a checkbox just to get my certification done, I cringe because it is not a checkbox. Compliance could be a strategy. I think about compliance as an offense strategy and a defense strategy. Your offense strategy is that could be your differentiator with compared to your single biggest competitor out there, right? So yeah, you might think about your product, your service, your pricing as your advantage, but compliance could be a huge advantage in certain industries. And on the defense side, if you don't have the right compliance in place, you might get huge fines from a certain regulatory agency, or you might lose one of your biggest contracts because you're not compliant. So compliance is absolutely not a checkbox, it is a strategy. So that's the second myth or an awareness gap. The third one is, again, to my earlier point, CEOs, business owners would rather spend their time thinking about their subject matter area, which is what makes them revenue. And so they delegate risk tracking to somebody on their team. And typically it's the head of IT or the head of operations. And if you talk to a business owner, CEO of a small business, and you ask them about their risk, you would often hear, oh, let's go talk to my head of IT. And I would recommend highly to any CEO, business owner of a small and medium sized company is that you would rather have a close understanding of your business risk, whether it's related to technology or not, because the risk landscape keeps evolving at such a rapid speed. You know this, Jason, the threat matrix has evolved so rapidly that as owners, as CEOs, if we are not aware of what could bring down our business, we're not doing our jobs well, I would say. So I would say risk tracking at a business level should still stay with the CEO or the business owner because that's strategic. Last but not the least, there's also a misconception or an awareness gap around IT skill availability, and especially in a market like Seattle where we are, or in Phoenix or some other places. Technology headcount is expensive.
Yeah.
But hiring people on your team is not the only way to add talent, right? So let's say you have a massive set of initiatives in front of you, and you might need 4 or 5 different skill sets. The only solution is not to hire 4 people on your team. The bills could add up very fast. That's where flexible IT comes in, right? Companies like ISOutsource, other managed service providers, we offer skills that you can use for fractional resources, right? You can bring in a network engineer for 2 weeks, figure out a small project, and then you can bring in a security expert, focus on an initiative for 4 months, bring in a productivity app specialist, think about how your apps are structured. That's the best part of what companies like us do is we augment the staff of some of our clients to give them IT at the right spend levels. So you're not, having to think about adding X number of headcounts to get through your IT roadmap. So I know that was a long answer to your short question, but if I think about awareness gaps and myths out there, those are the 4 things I can think about.
Yeah, one thing I'd add to that, Naveen, is even internally, right? We follow that same model where within our internal teams, from a understanding perspective, we don't staff internal IT with 15 people to cover all the areas. We lean into the services side of the organization, just like our clients.
So Jason, we've talked a lot about keeping the lights on. I think there's a process area we're missing out. And some of our business owners, clients, who manage small and medium businesses, they kind of completely ignore this part of their business, which could hurt them in the long run. And I'm talking about vendor due diligence and solution due diligence,
Yes.
which is, I believe, is a huge part of your IT strategy. So again, in your role as head of IT, can you explain to us the importance of solution due diligence and vendor due diligence?
Yeah, so the two are key together, right? And there's the technology side of it, but then there's the business operations side, which is equally important here. You could have multiple solutions to a single vendor, right? Understanding the vendor, the risk that vendor potentially brings into your environment. What are their strategies? How do they handle security? How do they handle breach notification? What are their insurance coverages? That's critical in that regard. But then there's the solution due diligence. So we talked about understanding duplicate tools that an organization may have, and the contract piece. Part of solution due diligence is breaking down what that solution is for, understanding where you're going to get your ROI from, so that you can hold people accountable in achieving that. Beyond those two, it's critical that you have people take a step back and articulate why, what they're solving for with the new solution before you jump into handling that solution or moving forward with that solution.
Yeah, thank you for spending a couple of minutes on that, because I think that's one area I would recommend that our clients look into closely.
Yes.
Because that will, one, help them identify risks that are sitting in their business, but also help in identifying consolidation opportunities, right? The way you said that. So before we pivot to the strategic side of the technology, right, and how we can invest some of these savings, let me recap what we talked about. So we talked about how right sizing is not just about cutting costs. Right sizing is about being strategic about your understanding of keeping the lights on costs and making sure you're prioritizing that, right? Looking for opportunities with contract auto renewals, licensing, and solution due diligence to identify tools that are redundant in your system and getting rid of those things. So you're going to make some significant savings. I still remember that $60,000 number you talked about, right? So, and then the co-managed IT solutions could help them save their costs on IT investments overall as they think about the future of how do I get skill sets for this. But let's pivot for a minute and talk about what a CEO cares about. As a CEO of a small and medium-sized business, I care about anything that can help me increase my business revenues. Because a growing company is a thriving company. Secondly, show me any initiatives that can help me drive down my operational costs. So help me increase my revenue, help me decrease my operational cost. And third is help me mitigate any business risk. So we talked about business risks quite a bit, right? So, but IT can do all three of these things, which is what I'm super excited about. What we do for our clients is we do things that can help boost their top line revenue, help them save costs to improve their operational expenses, and mitigate their business risk. So again, give us some practical ways on how we should be thinking about these three things.
So the tech landscape is changing quickly. I think everybody has heard the word AI or artificial intelligence, right? And then there's the less appealing word of automation that you don't hear a whole lot about. But what's I think really important is pairing the two. We all know what theoretically we can achieve with AI, and then taking that and automating things, taking the technology and having it do that low-level, mundane, repetitive stuff for us so that we can take our team members that were doing it and lift them up and grow them within the organization in more meaningful areas. I think there's a significant amount of opportunity. I think it's an area that is underutilized in our client base and just in general.
Yeah.
And that's a place where I really believe there's a lot of untapped potential.
That is true. So I think that could, if you approach AI and automation the right ways, you can think about new revenue channels. You can think about ways to eliminate inefficiencies in your system. And I would also add to your talk track about even something as simple as business continuity, right, and backups and disaster recovery. As you think about freeing up budgets, I would also strongly recommend to our clients that they have a robust DR strategy that is tested. That if your building is not accessible due to a variety of reasons, how quickly can you spin up a backup?
A really good example was the big storm that we had last fall, and our office was, in fact, a majority of our team members without power for 2+3 days. Being confident in the solution that you have and understanding how to implement it so that you're not left scrambling at the last minute. Yep. It's a lot cheaper to do it up front than it is in the moment.
It saves you so much of money if you're prepared, right? Well, what we don't want is our clients to be surprised by some of these things when things happen and not be ready for it. Yeah. So Jason, thank you. That was a great conversation. I'm going to try to wrap this up by giving our audience some takeaways from this conversation, right? The first thing is cut waste. So when you're thinking about the right sizing IT, there's a lot of waste in our system that if we're not paying close attention, it's going to suck a lot of your resources unnecessarily. So eliminate unused tools, eliminate redundant platforms, something that you bought 10 years back for your business that's sitting there, nobody uses it. Stop auto-renewing contracts like we talked about. So these are some ways you can cut costs. The second thing is your business needs technology. Technology does not take care of by itself. It needs support. Right size your IT support structure, whatever that looks like. It could be a combination of an internal team that you have, or it could be a completely outsourced IT team, or it could be a combination team. We call it an augmented team, where you have your core IT skill set, you bring in other resources on a fractional basis, on a need basis, so you're not spending for full-time headcount. There are so many ways you can right size your IT support structure. The third thing we talked about is boost your ROI. I think about any dollar that you put into technology, you want to see a multi-fold ROI return from that, right? So you talked about automation, you talked about AI, you talked about strategic initiatives that for every dollar you put in, you might get $3 to $5 back. But if we're not thinking about IT in a strategic way, we miss out on those opportunities. So think about IT as a strategic piece and to boost your ROI. The fourth thing is, I would say very simply, protect what matters most. And in your business, your customer data should matter the most to you, right? Any financial data should matter the most. There are so many things as a business owner, you can sit down and say, what matters most to me in my business? And is that protected? Do I have a backup plan? So if you approach it with that simple question, I think you can come up with a series of strategies. And the last but not the least, please don't think of IT goals as IT goals. Think of IT goals in conjunction with your business goals. Because when IT means business, that's our tagline. We believe that technology should be done for the sake of moving the business forward, not for the sake of implementing technology. And when you do that, you can, again, boost your top line, you can boost your bottom line, you can mitigate risk in your business. So those are my top 5 takeaways for our audience from this session. I really enjoyed talking to you, Jason, about some of these conversations. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for this fireside chat. Smart IT, right spend, how to avoid waste and scale strategically. We hope this conversation sparked new ideas and gave you practical insights to rethink how your organization approaches IT investments and growth. A special thank you to Naveen and Jason for sharing their expertise and real-world strategies. Their guidance reminds us that smart IT isn't just about technology, it's about aligning every decision with purpose, value, and long-term vision. To learn more, please visit ISOutsource.com/IT spend and download our free IT spend playbook. Until next time, stay strategic, stay secure, and keep innovating. Have a great day. Joining this fireside.